What's up, Thad Brown here with you on the Endgame. It is Monday, August the 11th. We haven't been here for a little while. We apologize for that. Some technical difficulties in the brand new digs here. Look, it's new. There are bugs that have to be worked out. It's for any new thing. That's why we have preseason in the NFL. That's why we have a little bit of preseason here, I guess, when it comes to the end game. But we're back today. We're back on Thursday. We are here now going forward. Maybe take a Thursday off before the NFL season starts. But we are ready to go for the fall and all the stuff we're going to talk about throughout this year. Today, of course, I think like many of you, I spent some time trimming the hay in the backyard. It's not grass anymore. It used to be grass. It's not grass, but now it's still, there's weeds and stuff. You want to make sure it looks nice. So today was trim the hay day at home, and just glad it looks good, even if it's mostly brown as opposed to green. These are all things that we all have to take care of in, Western and Northern New York when it comes to the middle of August. This is where I'm at. Moving on from that, though, let's get back into get into the NFL and the Bills. Look, preseason game number 1 was over the weekend. We're going to talk a lot about that today. Different thoughts I have, conclusions, some thoughts about different players after going through some of the game, watching the game over again. I want to spend some time today also talking about social media analysis. And, we are back now with Twitter video season. This guy is going to be a problem season. This guy is going to eat season. How do you best or appropriately kind of navigate all the different videos and thoughts and things that are going to happen in the offseason from me as well, by the way, or through the season, I should say. So I want to get into that a little later on in the show. But first, let's go back to the Bills. Giants and game number 1. And, of course, the big story from game number 1 had really nothing to do with anything that happened in the game. It was about before the game. James Cook was in uniform on the field. He was at least taking part in warm-up drills, but it wasn't a guy who didn't actually play in the game, obviously. But at least he was out there, right? That was a big step up from what we've seen, the first or the last 4 practices of St. John Fisher. Didn't do anything, didn't even show up at the field at all on Wednesday and Thursday. I think after being on camera Sunday and Monday, auspiciously, Cook decided that he had enough of, being the paparazzi target at St. John Fisher, so decided just not to show up for Wednesday and Thursday. But there he was on the field, and Sean McDermott said later that he and Cook had a good conversation about at least taking part in the warm-ups. Now, McDermott said that he wanted Cook to play in the game as well, but Cook said no, and you can understand why. Being a guy who's still in a contract holding and he wants to certainly save himself for, being able to, make that money and cash that check. Doesn't want to get an injury at this time of the year, certainly not in a preseason game, before he does sign that extension. But the bottom line is, this was progress. This was better than what the Bills have been getting out of James Cook for the last 4 days of training camp at St. John Fisher. Now, the Bills will practice again tomorrow. That'll be open to the media. They did have a walkthrough today that was closed to the media, so no idea what James Cook did today. But tomorrow we certainly will find out a little more about where he's at potentially and if anything materially has changed. And, my reaction from Cook being out there for the pregame warm-up is that at least the relationship between Cook and the Bills is still good. This is not a guy that's unhappy about the team. He talked a lot through the spring, even early in training camp, about wanting to do the right thing, wanting to be out there for his teammates, wanting to do his part when it comes to helping the Bills get to the Super Bowl. And the question, we've talked about it, on Bills Can't They Recap, I've talked about it on social media a little bit. The question is, what changed a couple weekends ago that moved Cook from, I'm going to be on the field, I'm going to participate, I'm going to do my job, to, nope, holding in. Got to make a point. Was it just something with the contract? Was there a snag? Was there an update or progress that was expected that was not fulfilled to the liking of James Cook's team? These are questions that need to be answered. But I think what Cook participating in warm-ups against the Giants does answer is that it's not a frosty relationship. This is not a situation where Cook is angry at the team. Is he professionally unhappy? Certainly seems that way. But is he mad? Is he frustrated? Is he, I'm not going to take this anymore? Doesn't seem that way. because Sean McDermott still has the ability, and Cook is still open to the idea of, if the coach asks him to do something that won't put his body on the line, that probably won't violate the point he's trying to make of having a hold-in, he's going to be open to that. He's going to do it. So he's still friendly with what's going on with the team. He's still, amenable to team requests up to a point. But does this mean that anything is better with the contract situation, which is the big picture here? I mean, it was great that he showed up for warmups. It's awesome that he was out there running around looking like a guy who was going to be, on the field. But does that change anything about his contract status? And no one knows. This is a internal Brandon Beane versus James Cook's agent situation. We don't know how close it is. Doesn't seem very close, but it could be. We don't know how far apart they are numbers-wise. We don't know what they're talking about. You never know with these contracts. It doesn't have to be just straight-up pay. It could be guarantees. It could be length of contract, all kinds of things. But is James Cook going to sign anytime soon? Did Cook being on the field for a warm-up Saturday change anything when it comes to whether he will be under contract for week one, under a new contract that he wants? And my answer to that is no. I don't see necessarily why that by itself is an indication that the contract situation is better. Maybe. It's certainly a nice olive branch from Cook to be able to agree to what Sean McDermott wanted. But I don't think it necessarily means anything is better with Cook and the Bills. Now, look, if he shows up for practice on Tuesday, that to me would be tangible progress that I would look at and say, wow, maybe there is some sort of breakthrough. Maybe there is going to be, something that happens with James Cook and the Bills agreeing to something long-term. Or at the very least, Cook might have finally decided, hey, this contract thing is not going to go my way no matter what I do. I might as well just play out the season and see how it goes in the offseason when I'm a free agent next year, which to me, I think is going to be the end game for this anyway. It feels like the Bills and Cook are far enough apart that there is not going to be a change in the next few weeks. That Cook feels good enough about his game and his earning potential that he can hold in or hold out, hold in on the field, hold out, as a regular person, hold out for, not the football sense, you know what I mean? That he can hold out and wait to get that big contract next off season. Does that change? Do the Bills decide, you know what? Maybe we need to pay Cook. I don't know. And separate of what Cook did in that game, I think the Bills came out of that game having to feel pretty darn good about their running back situation should Cook not be available for week one or whatever. Now, Ray Davis wasn't great on the ground. We'll talk about him a little bit later. But Ty Johnson looked really good in 3 carries. Frank Gore looked pretty elusive and dangerous, which is not a surprise for him in the work he got on Saturday against the Giants. So if it's not going to be James Cook on the field and you have to roll out with Ray Davis and Ty Johnson and Frank Gore Jr., I think if you're the Bills, you feel pretty good. So if I'm the Bills, I feel like my negotiating stance is now stronger after Saturday. I mean, even if you want to throw in the whole idea of Cook being amenable and open enough and friendly enough with the team that he's going to be willing to go out on warmups even while he's holding in. If I'm the Bills, I feel pretty good about my situation because the player doesn't hate us at the very least. He's still talking to us. He's still open to requests from the coach. And if he's not going to be available, I got 3 other guys I feel okay about. One of them, and Ty Johnson, he's already the guy for me in 2-minute situations. He's already the guy for me in 3rd downs. Ray Davis has already proven to me in at least one game last year that he can have the lion's share of the carries. Now, look, I've said this before, and I'll remind everybody now. James Cook is better than those guys. He's a notch up from those guys from sure. You don't go from James Cook to those 3 and lose nothing. There will be a drop-off. But coming out of Saturday, I thought Ty Johnson and Frank Gore looked plenty good for me to feel good about my situation. So if I'm Brandon Beane, I am not budging an iota off of whatever my number is for James Cook. So unless James Cook is going to change his demands, I separately think that I come out of that game on Saturday, even though Cook participated in warmups, thinking that he's not that much closer to signing a contract. And it's probably going to be on him to make the concession at this point. And maybe he will. I don't think James Cook should look at a preseason game and think, whoa, those guys were good, man. Maybe I should take $3 million less. I don't think he should do that. I don't think he will, which is why I land in the spot of I don't think much is going to change with the contract situation just because James Cook showed up. Maybe. And again, we'll find out more at least on Tuesday, tomorrow, when the Bills are back to practice in front of media, whether James Cook shows up or not. My guess is that he continues to hold in at least for another week or two. And then when we get to the regular season, that's when, the rubber meets the road with his decision. Do you just go and play out your last season of your rookie contract and hope to make money in free agency next year? Or do you really take this holding up a notch and start skipping out on regular season games? I think if you're a Bills fan, the most positive thing to take out of James Cook showing up for warmups is that not only is he still open to team requests, but that he understands the responsibility that he's already talked about to his teammates enough that he's going to still be out there for week one, even if this contract situation is not settled. And again, my prediction would be he plays out the last year, goes into free agency next year, and gets paid by someone. Still could be the Bills, but I think that's what it's going to be for James Cook going forward here. All right, beyond that, let's talk about Trey White for a minute, because all of us in the media have raved about Trey White's training camp and how well he's played so far. But against the Giants, gave up a couple passes. People a little nervous. I think there's some reaction out there that Trey White didn't play well. And now, look, that's not exactly going to be on Trey White's Hall of Fame resume. Look at what he did against the Giants. I mean, it certainly wasn't what you would want. But keep in mind, the two completions that he gave up are both comeback routes, short routes. Now, the first one was deeper down the field. I think Trey White's probably upset about that one. The second one was like 5 yards and turn around. When you're playing as a corner, especially in first and second down, which was what both those situations were, there are a lot of situations, even in a regular season game, where you're going to be happy to give up that first down, that short throw. You're going to complete a ball for 5 yards on me, but it's not going to be 50, because I'm trying to do the smart thing here. And that is what both those throws were. Now, again, the first completion was about a 12, 13-yard play. And I think that's one that Trey would want to be better on. And if you want to be concerned about Trey White, sure, that is one, that is an example that maybe he was a step slow there. But the other one, he gave up a 5-yard completion. I don't care. I really don't. It's something that you'll give up, 8 times out of 10 on a Sunday in the regular season. B, it's a preseason game. We don't know if the Bills were trying to press up there. We don't know if Joey Bosa said later on that there weren't many calls on the defensive line. I imagine there couldn't have been many calls game plan wise for the defensive backs either. So this is not a situation where the Bills went in with a game plan to totally shut the Giants down. We got to make sure Jackson Dart doesn't do anything against us. That on top of the fact that the routes themselves were not things that corners often will play tight on, and B, corners will often have success on. Remember, this is still the NFL where offense rules. So neither play was one where the corner has such an advantage that he should always take it away. The first deeper completion, maybe a little bit, but not the second one. And then tackling-wise, Trey White missed a couple. They were against tight ends. Look, he's never been known as a great tackler. He did have a pretty good one in the middle of those couple of misses. I'm not concerned. Trey White has been the best player in camp so far, or at least the most surprising player. I think Christian Benford probably has been a little bit better. But this preseason game doesn't change my confidence in him that he can be, at the very least, a pretty solid number 2 corner. The other one of the other big topics on the offensive side of the ball, backup quarterbacks. Mitch Trubisky v. Mike White. Is it really a battle? Well, I don't think much changed with what happened on Saturday against the Giants. This really felt like a situation where there was no blood in the backup quarterback battle. Wow, I wonder who wrote that. Both guys kind of started out slow and then settled down and played better later. Trubisky, to me, was the difference between the first-team Giants defense and then the second-team Giants defense coming in. Keep in mind, the Giants' D might be pretty good. I mean, they've got Brian Burns, they've got Kayvon Thibodeau, and then they've got Abdul Carter, the second or third overall pick, I don't remember when it was, who looked ridiculous. Abdul Carter embarrassed Osiris Torrance and Deion Dawkins on separate reps. Now, Dawkins got him later on. And I think over the course of a full game, Dawkins would win plenty of reps against the rookie. But the couple that Carter won were impressive enough to get me shaking my head at how good he was in this game. And the Giants D-line in general might be really good. So looking at Trubisky's game and thinking, there's a problem there. He didn't look very good. The Giants D-line and defense in general might make a lot of quarterbacks look very not good this year. And then when the first team came out and the second team came in, Trubisky rolled the offense down the field for a touchdown. Mike White, similarly, started out not very good. I mean, hold on a second, get the right video. Did not look very good. But then settled down after the long touchdown to KJ Hamler and was pretty solid from there. So the Bills, I think, have kind of sent the message about where they feel about these two guys. Number one, they did it with the depth chart they released last week. Not that that's not a thing that's written in blood, but they did put Mitch Trubisky number 2 on the opening season depth chart. And then number 2, by putting Mitch Trubisky on the field to start this game with the number 1 offense without Josh Allen, the Bills gave him what might be the only opportunity to work with the first team for a quarterback not named Josh Allen this preseason. But you think about how the preseason would likely go. Game 2 is probably the one where you want to roll Josh Allen out if you're gonna, because in week 3 or preseason game number 3, generally nobody who's a starter plays. So if Josh Allen's going to play with the ones this weekend in Chicago and none of the ones play next weekend in Tampa, you have not given Mike White an opportunity to play in a preseason game with the first team. Now, that isn't a prerequisite to getting the backup job. You can certainly get enough reps in practice with the ones to overtake Mitch Trubisky. But you would think if the Bills were seriously considering moving on or moving to a different backup quarterback, that White would get a shot in the preseason. And it doesn't seem like he will now. Now, the Bills are going to do joint practices with the Bears on Friday. And it wouldn't stun me, after having worked with the ones in a practice setting, that the Bills don't roll Josh Allen out for the preseason game. Then you could probably give Mike White a chance there. But that is the less likely of the scenarios. So if Mitch Trubisky has gotten the only opportunity the Bills are going to have in preseason for a backup quarterback to work with the ones, seems to me like the backup quarterback discussion is over, which, frankly, it might have been from the start. The only reason we're even talking about this is that White has looked a little bit better in camp than Trubisky has. Trubisky's had moments, but White has been the better, more consistent quarterback. But Trubisky has the belt. He's the guy that has the job. And Mike White, I think, has got to take it from him. And he's been doing, like I said, a decent job of that in camp. Enough of it that we have talked about it on Bills Camp Day Recap on this very channel multiple times. But in this preseason game, it kind of felt like both guys pretty much played it neutral. No one was better than the other. And in that situation, Trubisky's the guy who's probably going to come out on top. So I still think that Mitch Trubisky is the guy you're going to look at likely as the backup quarterback, barring something ridiculous happening in the last 2 weeks of the preseason, which with veterans and guys like this seem really, really unlikely. Another thing defensively I want to get to, a couple things actually. Matt Milano, first play of the game, loved it. It was... Nope, not that one. There we go. Why didn't I do a Milano one? Okay. As I'm apologize. I'm cycling through my graphics here, trying to keep up with myself. My brain works so fast sometimes that even I can't keep up with it. Matt Milano has had a really good camp and has been all over the field at times. Especially in that second week of camp, you saw plays from him over and over and over and over. The first play of the game against the Giants, Matt Milano getting to the sideline to stop a running back coming out of the backfield for a gain of 0 on a reception. Perfect Matt Milano. I mean, that's everything that we've seen. If you have not gone to a single day of practice and you watch just that one play against the Giants, then you've seen the entire Matt Milano camp. The fact that he is doing that consistently is the most encouraging thing that you can say about number 58. And why I'm very excited, assuming both those guys, he and Terrell Bernard, can stay healthy, to see them together on the field. Because we haven't really seen it for more than, a couple games. And I've always thought that Bernard and Milano are kind of cut from the same cloth. And, Milano we know is great, and Bernard has played pretty well. Putting those two guys together in the same field, I can't wait to see what the Bills can do. The question has been more so, can you get that out of Milano than Bernard? Because Milano's been hurt so much the last few years. So far in the preseason, like we've said, I'm sure you've read it a lot from different media who've been to camp, he's looked really, really good. And that play right there was all you needed to see. That was Matt Milano's camp summed up in one snap. He has looked that good. Can't wait to see where he goes from here. Okay, what do we go? Ray Davis will go next. First of all, if you have Ray Davis on a fantasy team, his fantasy value has just gone up a little bit because that guy's a legitimate kicker. I don't know if you've seen the video going around social media. He says he made a 54-yarder in high school. I don't know if he'd do that in the NFL. But that point after, remember, the PATs now in the NFL are 33 yards. It's not an easy kick. It's not a gimme. And he made that with room to spare. I mean, he looks like a guy, if the Bills had to, who could run out in the field and make a 35, 40-yarder at the end of the game if you needed him to. And Davis was funny in the locker room. He talked later about the emergency kicker battle. He said, I think it was Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid tried it, and he said he was nervous at first. But when he saw Kincaid and Knox toe kicking instead of soccer-style kicking using the inside of your foot, once he saw those guys kicking with their toe, he said, I knew the battle was over. I knew I had it. And hey, it is never a terrible thing to have the option in-house and have confidence in it if you're a pro football team, because these things do happen. I don't remember what game it was, but there was a game last year where the other team's punter pulled a hamstring in warm-ups and the kicker had to punt for the rest of the game. It does happen where you roll up on a Sunday morning and your kicker is suddenly just not available. And you got to figure out what you're doing next. Well, the Bills have that figured out. Ray Davis is fine. Look, he's not rolling up and making one from 61 like Bass did last year to beat the Dolphins. But if you need a guy to competently make PATs, cash in on anything that would be inside 40, he looked like he was there. Never anything wrong with increasing your value on a football field. He's not in a contract year, but I don't think that'll hurt if it comes to that going forward. Another thing that a lot of people talked about after this game, the rookie defensive linemen and the way they played. And I thought the three guys on the line, the three top picks, TJ Sanders, Deion Walker, Landon Jackson, they all had okay days. I thought Walker had the best of the three. He had a couple of good pass rushes. And Walker, for a guy who is best known as just being a giant thing that's hard to move on the defensive line and great at stopping the run for that reason, he showed some athleticism in the pass rush. He really had some wiggle there when it comes to, and a lot of it is hand fighting too, being able to, use your hands, lean on guys. The move I liked was the second one that got pressure on Jameis Winston, where he kind of gave the guard a shove, kind of got the guard leaning inside away from him. And then when the guard leans, and if you can imagine like a pro football player, right? These are giant 300-pound offensive linemen. And Deion Walker got his guard to lean a little bit. So maybe creating like 12 inches of room. But a smart, talented defensive lineman knows that any point of leverage is something that you can exploit. When that guard leans 12 inches, that now suddenly becomes a spot where you can move yourself into that space and take advantage of it. And it's exactly what Walker did. He punched the guard off the snap, got him leaning a little bit, and then basically bull rushed into that space and leaned on the guard, who's now just a little bit out of position, enough to get pressure on the quarterback. It didn't result in a sack, but that little bit of pressure can sometimes be enough to create an incompletion. And it was an incompletion. It was a third down play. The Bills got off the field thanks to the incompletion there. I don't know how much Walker's play had to do with it, but it was a good play. Now, beyond that, when it comes to the other two guys, I thought Sanders was pretty quiet, which is kind of mirrored his camp so far. He's been fine. Nothing. You're not seeing running backs running over or offensive linemen running over TJ Sanders to create long runs. But he hasn't really flashed in camp. I didn't think he flashed much in the game. He had one pass pressure that I liked in the third quarter when it seemed like the Giants were really dialing down the depth chart when it comes to their offensive linemen. But still a good play. And then I've seen some complaints on social media about Landon Jackson, the third-round pick for the Bills, the defensive end. Look, I think Jackson's path to success might take a little longer. He's a guy that doesn't come with the ridiculous natural athletic skills that you'd want to see out of an edge rusher, a guy that's going to just roll up and be great at this day one. I think Jackson's the kind of guy that's going to need to develop a plan. He's going to need to, use his assets well It's a strategy. It's a mental thing. Bottom line, it's going to be a learning and patience thing. And for people who are throwing out the baby with the bathwater here after one bad preseason game, you got your own issues. But regardless, this is going to be the kind of thing, probably with all three of these guys, that it's going to take a little bit of a while for them to get to their ceiling, like many rookies do. But the point I want to make here is this draft was seen as one where there were not a ton of ridiculous prospects available. This was not a draft where you had a million stars. This was more of a meat and potatoes draft where a lot of these defensive linemen and in other positions too, these are guys who would develop into solid starters. Guys you can lean on, who are not going to make mistakes, who are going to be, above average players, but not stars. And if we project, or if we think that these three guys are all going to fall into that bucket, which is the most likely scenario, then preseason game number one is not going to be spectacular. You're not going to see Sanders or Walker or Jackson just blowing up first-team linemen in their first taste of NFL action with a referee and where everybody gets tackled to the ground. This is right where they should be. I think the fact that we're talking about Deion Walker doing anything in this game is above average. It's better than expected. So I'm not there's nothing I'm going to come away from preseason game number one with this Bills team being concerned about, in large part because it is the preseason. Did Sanders and Jackson have mostly quiet games? I thought so. Walker flashed a little bit more, but not a ton more. And with Walker, too, I talked about how much I liked him in the pass game, even though he's supposed to be a run-first defensive lineman. His work in the run game wasn't great. It did seem like he was getting moved around more than a guy that size should be. Or, his calling card is going to be, using that gigantic size to just be a pain in the neck when it comes to running between the tackles. And that really didn't happen. The Giants on at least one occasion single blocked him and moved him with a non-starter. So, if you want to be concerned about something, that might be at the top of my list when it comes to these three guys. But we're way too early for any of that stuff. And I think overall, their camps have been okay. I think, again, Walker's been the one of the three, even in practices at St. John Fisher, who flashed a little more. And the preseason game, again, I think was a reflection from what we saw from them at Fisher and at least those practices so far. Also on the defensive line, let's talk about Michael Hoyt for a minute. He's been really, you talk about guys who flash. You see 55 over and over and over, making plays when it comes to camp or again against the Giants. The only thing about him is that every time I see 55 making a play, it's against the twos. It's always a Mitch Trubisky, Mike White rep in practice, again against the Giants, because of the way the Bills rotated their defensive ends. Joey Bosa and Greg Rousseau played early. So, the Hoyts and Ebenezes of the world didn't get a ton of look against the first team. But when Hoyt makes his plays, it's been almost always against the twos. I don't think that's even a bad thing. I'm not saying it as a bad thing. Because against the Giants, he had at least one snap where he, as easily as you can, stepped around a defensive end and made a run stop. Just walked around the guy. He also got knocked on a pass later in the game that almost led to a Joe Andreessen interception. So he was making plays on the regular. And that's been, again, reflective of what he's been in camp. It's funny how so much of the preseason reactions are the same as what we've seen at camp. Shocking guys practice like they play. But Hoyt's another one. And like I said, he has been so good at the reps he's been in at. To say he's dominated the twos, I don't think is a bad thing. I think you want a guy who you expect to get regular reps against first teamers when the season starts to look like a man among boys against the twos, and he has. The thing is, I just haven't seen 55 making the same plays when it's Spencer Brown and Deion Dawkins. Admittedly, Spencer Brown hasn't had many chances, and again, it wasn't against the first team against the Giants. We got a lot of season to go. Hoyt obviously is not even going to be available until Halloween because of the 6-game suspension. So there's plenty of time to see him develop. So I've liked a lot what I've seen from him. I think this is a guy that is going to be not necessarily a weapon, but someone who feels like he's going to be a consistent, dependable playmaker, who's going to offer you a lot of different options when it comes to the defensive line. The thing is, just so far in camp, we haven't seen him do it against first-teamers. He's going to get his chance, no doubt about that. It just hasn't happened yet, and it's the only thing I can say about all the production he's had, because if you've been following camp and what reporters have said about him, I'm sure you've seen Hoyt's name a lot when it comes to reacting to what's going on, plays that are being made, and that preseason game was no different. It's just only been against the twos. You know, when he gets a shot at against the ones, I think he'll keep making plays. I just haven't seen it yet, and that's the only thing I'm waiting for with him. All right, we're going to take a break here. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit about Twitter analyst guy, because he's popular again, man. It's his season again. I'm one of them, too, to be honest, so I got to be straight with you there. How do you know who knows what they're talking about? We'll discuss that when we come back. You're watching the Endgame here on Rock 1. We're back after this. Thad Brown back with you on the Endgame here on a Monday. One preseason game in the books. We got two more to go, both on the road. Bills are at the Bears this week, following some joint practice time with the Bears. Joint practice time to me, by the way, is kind of the one where I think you get the best work in the preseason. I wouldn't be surprised, by the way. I know the NFL makes money on preseason games, so those things are never going away. But really, I could see a time where the NFL, let's say, in other words, I think we all believe an 18-game schedule is coming. Maybe down the road, in the ridiculous imaginary world of Roger Goodell and the NFL owners, you don't play 18 regular season games and 2 preseason, which is what the move is going to be. You play 20 regular season games, right? They all count. Player bodies and health and all that stuff, you got to turn a serious blind eye to that. But, hey, we've gone from 16 to 17 and probably 18 in the span of what's likely to be less than a decade. Is it impossible to imagine going to 20? Okay, just go with me on this. In the world where we play 20 regular season games, there'd be no preseason games because everybody goes and does joint practices. Your preseason schedule is similar to what it is now. The Giants would have come up to Fisher or maybe Orchard Park. They do a couple practices. They go home. Next week, the Bears or the Bills go to Chicago, do the same thing with the Bears. And that's what preseason is. No games because we're doing 20 regular season games. I could see that being the situation. Not likely, not soon for sure, but it would not stun me if that was the case. All right, like I've been saying, already you're seeing it this weekend. Twitter analysis guy is back. And again, I'm going to be one of those guys. I, as much as anyone else, like going through the film, seeing who did what, trying to explain what went on. Again, even if you have access to the film, you don't know all the calls, you don't know everything. But the All-22 film, or even just rewatching a broadcast, can provide more insight, more thoughts, more information. I certainly, watched up quite a bit to get ready for this show. So you're going to spend a lot of time now on social media seeing someone post, look at this rep by player X, and look how good he's going to be. There's one going around with the Bills. Now, it's not always good stuff, where the touchdown pass that Dane Jackson allowed in the second quarter, the Jackson Dart one to LaJordan Humphrey. There's a clip going around pointing out how Damar Hamlin was the free safety on the play, didn't come over and help out over the top of Jackson fast enough or really at all. And it's being used as criticism of Damar Hamlin. Now, look, I'm not going to tell you that Damar Hamlin is an elite all-pro safety. He's good enough to be in the league for dang sure and to play for the Bills. But you probably can do better than Damar Hamlin. Regardless, this one preseason play is not an example, or at least a sufficient one, for my opinion or anyone else who really knows what they're talking about, that Damar Hamlin is not very good in the NFL. You don't know what Hamlin was doing on the play. First of all, he looked like he was in a center fielded look, so it's either cover 1 or cover 3. So he's the deep safety, essentially with responsibility all over the field. There's a receiver that might be running a deep route on the other side of the field that he has theoretically some responsibility for. So expecting him to go sideline to sideline is not always reasonable. Or it might not even been his job in that situation. The Bills easily could have said, you know what, just for this week, play center field, don't worry about the sidelines. You don't know what's going on. So the fact that Damar Hamlin did not get all the way to the sideline to help Dane Jackson out with a deep ball in the first half of a preseason game, I don't care. It doesn't matter. Which is why I don't put a lot of stock in preseason film. I do review it, obviously, for a lot of reasons, but I'm not going to make many conclusions, especially from stuff like that. If you want to look at how Deion Walker fared going head-to-head with a guard in a one-on-one situation, that's something you can gain some information from. Trying to read coverage and responsibilities and understand what a safety is supposed to be doing, don't waste your time. Beyond that, though, I've gotten to a point now where I have a problem with most of X or Twitter analysis. You can pretty much take a minute and a half or 2 minutes of video of anyone and make any conclusion. I can make Zach Wilson look better than Josh Allen in a 2-minute Twitter clip. Doesn't mean that all those clips are ridiculous. You shouldn't buy into them. But those clips are just one small snapshot of what a player is doing. It is not the full read on a player. How good or bad they are is not something that you can prove in a handful of plays. The only way you know that is by watching the duration, everything they've done, or at least multiple years of it. You know, we don't need Josh Allen 2019 to show how good he is now. Give me 2 or 3 years. It's not something you're going to be able to do in 2 or 3 minutes. And those things can be easily altered or engineered to create the narrative or the message that the social media user wants to put out. And this is important because the lesson for social media now when it comes to sports, maybe some other things too, but certainly with sports and the NFL, positive stuff sells. You all like to hear people say good things about the player that you root for or the team that you root for. And let me tell you, all of us in the media know it. And some of us will exploit it more often than others. For example, Brian Baldinger, all right? This is a guy that a ton of respect for him, but I mean, he's played in the NFL. He's on Fox now. Let me give you the full Brian Baldinger life here. I'm looking at that. He played 5 years for the Cowboys, 3 years for the Colts, was in Buffalo for an offseason, and played a couple years for the Eagles. This is a guy who played a decade in the NFL, offensive guard, offensive lineman, really smart, by the way. I mean, they know a lot of football. Other guys do too, offensive linemen. I talk to those guys all the time, man. They know a ton of football. So Brian Baldinger, with a decade in the NFL, that dude has forgotten 3 times as much football as I know. But if you go to his X feed, it is over and over, every single player is the best. I went through it today. Sauce Gardner is the best. This guy for the Cowboys is the best. This player for it's just every single player is awesome. And now look, when he goes through and breaks down why those players are awesome, there are good things you can learn from that. There are things that you can pick up and understand better about the game of football through what Brian Baldinger is telling you. But when his feed is every player is good, every player is great, there's a reason for that. It's because that's what people want to see. That's what's going to gain him extra engagement. People are going to click on, whoa, he said that the guard that we just drafted is awesome. I want to watch that. That first round pick that we made at defensive end, he's a guy that we all should watch out for. I want to watch that. And it doesn't mean that Brian Baldinger is wrong, but I personally will not look at much that he puts out on social media right now because I know where it's all going to land. Because he's going to just tell you that everything is great. Every single player is awesome. And there are times with the Bills, you know, where I do see all the film and watch all the time, where even though Brian Baldinger, again, is ridiculously more knowledgeable with the game of football than me, when it comes to the Bills, I probably watch more film on it than he does because it's hard. It's near impossible for anybody to watch every single play of every single team all year long. It is really hard to do that. And I'm not going to expect a national analyst to know it. So when there are times when Brian Baldinger is rolled up with this player for the Bills is awesome, I might say, yeah, he was awesome on those 3 plays you're showing. But over the course of the year, I have questions about him. It does leave you, the fan, in a weird spot, though, because you don't have time at home to watch all the plays that I do. It's my job. I have to. Or at least I want to do the job at a certain level. So when you see a guy like Brian Baldinger, who, again, has great credentials, post on social media that everything is great about the player we're talking about, why would you have any reason to doubt it? And look, again, there are things he's going to tell you that are smart and knowledgeable and helpful, obviously. It doesn't necessarily make it right. To further this example, so I do a lot of my social media, or at least you can do a lot of football research on YouTube. There's a lot of great videos out there, broadcasts. I do a lot of college football stuff in draft season going to YouTube. So one thing I've noticed, let me see if I can get this up here. Okay, so let's go. This is the YouTube page, right? So I searched Buffalo Bills threat. And you can do some of this by just searching a team or whatever. And there's some basic stuff there. There's a Bills ticket thing. And then our buddy Sal Capaccio from Bills Kickoff Live talking about his impressions. This thing down here is what I want to show you. Why the NFL is scared of the Buffalo Bills, okay? This is from somebody called Touchdown Kingdom. I have no idea what it is, all right? It seems like wow, the Bills are going to be great this year. Everybody should be scared of them. Just like the video says. And there are, this thing has had 8,000, almost 9,000 views. Who this Touchdown Kingdom person is, I have no idea. What credentials they have, I have no idea. But in this world of everybody has a YouTube feed, everybody has a social media feed, it's I shouldn't say very easy. It is easier to look like an expert. I mean, this video, the picture looks great, right? Little AI with Josh Allen with the finger over his mouth, like, shh. We're going to be awesome this year. It looks like somebody who knows what they're talking about. Well, go click on his feed, right? Touchdown Kingdom. Look at this. Follow me along. Meet the greatest defense of all time. Talking about the Eagles. Jared Goff's lifestyle is not what you think. Right? This lifestyle stuff, whatever. Denver Broncos' new team is terrifying. You'll never look at Bo Nix the same way. Why the Chicago Bears are Super Bowl contenders? There's a reason why all this is the same way. It's because that sells. And this guy, this YouTube user, I shouldn't assume it's a male, has 9,000 subscribers. This video with the Bears, 42,000 views. The Bo Nix one, 52,000 views. Denver Broncos are terrifying, 55,000 views. I mean, it looks like they're constantly, this feed is concentrating on a few teams. Regardless, the point is the same. You won't go to YouTube and find 100 videos on why your team is terrible. There's a couple comedy writers out there that'll do that. Other than them, you won't. Because that is not what sells. That is not what's going to get you to click. And I know people out there think the negative stuff is what draws in the clicks. I've had people tell me before when I post something about criticism of a Bills player or a different player, oh, you're just doing that because, if you can get people angry, they'll click on it. And sometimes that works. But you know what the easier thing to do is? Post something good about your team. Because that will always get clicks. And it also saves you the headache of having to argue with people for days and hours later on X or social media anyway. So I think the bottom line is here, understanding what the motivation is for a lot of social media users out there when it comes to sports. Now, keep in mind, look, big picture in the world, it doesn't matter, right? This is sports. If I'm going to make 1,000 videos on how everybody has a player who every other team should be scared of, okay, it's sports, it's fun, right? I'm not posting what might be spun analysis on tax cuts or medical insurance or how schools should be run, right? Things that legitimately matter. This is sports. So I'm not going to tell you that anyone out there, if there's a YouTube out there who's creating videos that tell you every single team is great, whatever, it's sports, have fun. But if you want legitimate analysis, if you're looking to, really understand what's going on out there, a lot of these YouTube, all these social media users, not all of them, some of them, a good chunk of them, are going to lean positive because they know you love it. How do you, at the end of the day, figure out what person is legit, what person you should listen to? I hate to say it, it's hard. You can't, I'm not going to sit here and give you a list of people that are great at it. I mean, I have people that I like. The best way to understand or to locate quality analysis on social media is by going to different feeds, following different people over a long period of time. You're not going to see it, wow, this one video is great, I should follow this person all the time. That might open a door for you, but to get an accurate read on whether this person knows what the heck they're talking about, it's going to take a long time. It's going to take over and over videos and thoughts and analysis that you see and then You can kind of test it out. Hey, this person said this about this player. Let me see if they actually play like this. Oh, they did. Look at that. It's going to take a while. And I know that a lot of people out there don't have the time to really put into it. I work in media. I'm trained to understand, what looks legit and what looks like BS. Doesn't mean I know everything about it, but I know more than the most people do because it's my job. And most people, I've found by talking to them, a lot of times they don't understand what social media reporters, what analysts, what content out there is to be believed because you don't have the time, or most people don't have the time to put in the research work to figure that out. Y'all got jobs and kids and families, parties. I go take mom to the doctor. I got to take my daughter to karate. I get that. Makes it harder. And it's more of a problem in the world of politics. I'm not going to get into that. It's outside of my field of expertise in terms of, politics and things like that. But in terms of the use of the media, it's probably not too dissimilar. And at least in sports, I can tell you that making you happy is what everybody wants to do. So if you want to find legitimate, not necessarily hard news, I want to say, but accurate, thoughtful analysts, it's going to take a long time of kind of going to the same feed, the same people over and over and seeing who provides you the information you like. I will say that what I try to do when I post something that about a player or a play, I'm just telling you what I think. It's honest, it's straightforward. I'm trying to be fair, I'm trying to be accurate, I'm trying to provide context. I don't try to push a player or a team or a narrative. Probably by being human, it happens from time to time. So when you see me post something on X, that's where I'm coming from. But don't take my word for it. Follow me for a long time, see what I say, see what you think about it. And if you decide I don't know what I'm talking about, that's fine. But you're not going to get that answer out of a 2-minute video. You're not going to get that answer out of one scroll through YouTube, and you're not going to get that answer from one post. It's going to take a long period of time to really understand it. I'm sure I will revisit this topic throughout the year. As you can see, it's something that gets me a little bit fired up. Let's take a break. When we come back, Rachel Laverty is going to jump in. We're going to do Did You See? Cool things from the weekend. That's next. You're watching the Endgame right here on Rochester First. There we are. Ed Brown, Rachel Laverty, in here on the very end of the Endgame for a Monday, August the 11th. Monday show, getting ready for preseason game number 2. But right now we're going to talk about things we thought were awesome over the weekend. And Rachel, I'll let you go first here. This is our weekly Did You See segment. So what was the thing you saw that worked out great for you, or at least caught your eye this weekend?
Yeah, some history was made in the MLB this weekend. The first woman umpire to ump an MLB game in the regular season. Jen Powell umped the Miami and Atlanta series. She was in the field the first 2 games, and then she was behind the plate for the final game of the series yesterday. Yeah, just some cool stuff, just seeing, a woman on the big stage. And I know a lot of people were saying, looking at, I remember her first pitch, people were like, oh, she missed the first call.
Yeah, I thought that too.
People were like, it was a little inside, she called it a strike. But I mean, regardless of her accuracy, the first few pitches, pretty cool stuff just to see her on the big stage, and we'll see years to come because she's been in the minor leagues for, I think it said like over 1,000 minor league games under her belt. So finally getting the call up is pretty cool, and yeah, just cool stuff to see.
I mean, 1,000's a huge number, but you probably get that in 8 or 9 seasons, right? For the most part. Look, she's more than qualified. I mean, this is probably something that's overdue, right? I mean, something that should have happened a long time ago.
I'm surprised this was the first time ever.
Right, right. Because there's been female officials in the NBA and NFL for years, especially the NBA. But it was, I saw the same thing. Someone posted the first call. I'm like, oh, this is cool. Let me watch it. And then it was inside by like this much. It wasn't even close. Look, even umpires in their first game are going to be nervous.
Stage fright.
Right? Exactly. I wouldn't say, I wouldn't use that word. You get in trouble in the majors a lot if we use the word fear. But regardless, it's her first game too. I can imagine being a little tight. Yeah. It wasn't like it was the third pitch; it was the first pitch.
And nobody's ever happy with umps. Like, let's also put that out there. I mean, no one is ever like.
But like we
it's have under a microscope.
We have a box now, so we know
that is true.
Right. And don't get me wrong, I don't think the box is 100% foolproof.
Yeah.
But that pitch was off the plate.
It was.
Whatever.
It was
so regardless, nice to see baseball, catch up in this area, frankly. Probably something that should have happened a long time ago. Becoming an umpire is, I think, more so than the other officiating groups, it feels like a really unique fraternity in that I've always thought that football and basketball handle the umpire issues way better, or the refereeing issues, than Major League Baseball does. Too often they end in guys coming out there and arguing nose to nose.
Yeah.
It's dumb.
Yeah.
So I think because of that, it makes umpires more tight knit. So having a woman kind of break through there, way overdue. My thing was the big story of the weekend. Morris Norris, at least with the NFL preseason. I don't know if you saw this, but Falcons, Lions. It was just a running play. Norris is a backup defensive back for the Lions, and is just had his head in the wrong place at the wrong time. Got run over by the running back. The running back, by the way, is from Rochester. Nathan Carter went to Kearney. Is playing for the Falcons, trying to make a team there. So he goes down, goes to the hospital. First of all, he's fine. He's okay. In fact, the team's already talked today about working him back into drills. So this is not a life-threatening situation, but you can see from the pictures, it seemed life-threatening at the time, right? The reason I bring this up is that after they take him off in the ambulance in the fourth quarter, I don't know if you saw this. So there's about 14 minutes to go. The next play is a snap, and the quarterback takes the ball for the Falcons and just stands there and lets the clock roll. And I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, me too.
And they were just going to let the 14 whatever run out.
Yeah.
And it was funny. The guys are standing around. They're talking. They know what to do. And then they took the prayer circle, which we saw in the pictures there. And the thing that really kind of got me, this is awesome. Good job. Glad he's okay. So many things about this are great. The thing I do want to talk about is that with about 6 minutes to go, the referee in the game said, okay, the game's over. So they let it run for like 8 minutes. And you can see the guys in the NFL office in New York saying, what do we do? No one's doing anything. The clock's do we just let them go? All right, put a call onto the ref and we'll just end the game.
Yeah.
And I can see the NFL being caught off guard and not expecting them to come back with an A1 reaction. But thinking about it later, my reaction was they should have let the clock run.
I agree.
They should have let the whole thing go, take it down to 0.
Yeah.
We're going to sit there for 14 minutes and enjoy the fact that these men are being human and appreciate their teammate, their opponent, the guy who worked hard with him. We're going to give them all 14 minutes.
Yeah.
You pray, you do what you want, shake hands. We're just going to leave the ball out there, let the clock roll out, and let them have the full moment as opposed to just being like, no one's doing anything. We're out of here, And not, again, I don't want to criticize the NFL for that, but having, hours and hours to think about it, that would have been my call for doing that.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I think letting it wind down just would have added to the moment, like you said, of just showing how much respect, like in that moment, all of those players had, and it would have definitely been, I think ending it was 6 minutes left is what you said. They ended it at
6-ish, I think so. Yeah.
At that point, you got 6 minutes. Just let it wind down and have everybody have their moment. Yeah, I agree with you.
And I think the NFL was probably thinking why keep it going? Everybody's made their point. Everybody wants to go home. It's the right thing to do. Let's just do it. But it was a very unique situation for sure. All right, Rach, thanks for joining us. We'll be back on Thursday again. More Endgame. Talking more about the Bills and Bears coming up this week. Thanks for watching here on Rochester First. For Rachel Everett, I'm Thad Brown. We'll see you again on Monday or Thursday. My bad.